Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Dewayne. I got a video for that Kimball, United States Army veteran and retired VA rating specialist. Today, I'm bringing you more VA claim nuggets as it pertains to the VA claims process. And today, I'm going to be discussing, as a former VA rater, trained by the Department of Veterans Affairs, what did I want to see in a veteran's claims file or when they submitted that VA claim. Today's video, I'm going to break it down for you, and I think this will help you be successful with your VA compensation claim. Okay, everyone, before I get into today's video, you all should know by now, I am a former VA rater, retired, meaning I used to work for the Department of Veterans Affairs under VBA compensation as a VA rater, trained by the Department of Veterans Affairs and someone that adjudicated their own claim as a former rater. Now, what did I want to see as a former VA rater when I adjudicated claims to help me grant the veteran service connection? And if I was rating today, guess what? I would want to see the same things. Now, here's the nugget. It's not anything personal that I want to see because I couldn't grant service connection off of my personal feelings. I had to grant service connection off of VA regulations. So I'm gonna give you a heads up. This information I'm gonna share with you is nothing personal. It is from the VA regulations that allowed me to grant service connection when certain things were met, okay? So there's 4 different things. Number 1, diagnosis. Back then and even now, you need a diagnosis. It helps to cut through the red tape. Trust me, you don't want that third-party CMP examiner deciding if you have a diagnosis or not. Take the time, go to your primary care. If it's at the VA, get a diagnosis for something. COPD, sleep apnea, PTSD, whatever you are claiming, make sure you get that diagnosis. Number 2, evidence. Evidence, evidence, evidence. Now, I think even back then and now, you still need evidence, but more so now than in years past, okay? Start going to the doctor, creating that paper trail or any other evidence that you may need if it's not medical or mental. Make sure you go out and get it and you can submit that with the VA claim. You don't want the VA to do all of the development. Take the time and you, the veteran, go out and do some development on your claim yourself. Number 3, continued treatment. Now, this is something I did without even knowing, okay? I just did it because I was having certain medical issues, okay? So if you've been out 5 years, if you've been out 10 years, or whatever it is, make sure you continue to get that treatment because there are some VA employees that say, hey, there's no continuity of treatment or something like that, and flat out deny the claim without even giving you a CMP exam, okay? Number 4, if you have a DBQ and Nexus, sufficient, okay? And this is something you're gonna hear me harp on throughout 2025. Every month, you're gonna hear me talking about DBQs and Nexus statements because it is a hot topic right now. So I was rating before DBQs came out. And then all of a sudden, they magically appeared, okay? And I knew it was gonna be a game changer. So when veterans submitted DBQs and Nexus statements, VA's training is specific. Raters have to go line by line to make sure it is sufficient, okay? And the reason why I took the extra time to do it is because I didn't want to have to waste the veteran's time, and I didn't want to have to waste the VA's time, money, and resources by requesting an exam that I didn't need because I could rate with the evidence of record. So those are 4 things. I know you're thinking, well, Dewayne, man, this was a quick video. You didn't share any slides. Pump the brakes. I got some slides. Let's go ahead and get into it. Slide number 1. Now, here is slide number 1. This is the VA's definition of evidence from their what? M21-1 manual reference. And it states evidence is every type of proof offered to establish a fact. Now, we all know in the rating decision, there is a section where raters have to list the evidence that they reviewed to adjudicate that claim. And I guarantee you a lot of veterans are not taking the time and going through and saying, okay, I have a copy of everything that I submitted. Let me make sure it's in the evidence section of this rating decision, okay? So the first piece of evidence, testimonial, oral or written statements, okay? They could come from you, they could come from a family member, documentary, documents, okay? Now, this does not mean the more documents that you submit, the better your chances of getting service connected. I know a lot of veterans think that. That is not the case. But this is your claim. If you want to submit 10, 15, 20,000 pages of documents, go right ahead. If I was still rating, would I read it line by line, 10,000 pages? Probably not, just being honest, because I was on a quota, and if I don't meet that production quota, I can end up getting fired, okay? Real. Any tangible object. They give you an example. A prescription medication container may provide evidence of a diagnosis or treatment. Now, when I read it, I used to see veterans, you know how you go to the pharmacy and they'll give you your medication in a bag and they'll staple, it's not a receipt, but it'll have your name and the prescription, the name of the prescription on there and all that. They would send that in. That's evidence, that's proof, okay? Demonstrative evidence that illustrates testimony of a witness. Example, a map, diagram, or reenactment. I didn't see this that often, but I can recall the majority of the time that I did see it was during Agent Orange, Vietnam. And veterans would say, hey, you know, we were in this valley or we were in this valley. And they would send a map of Vietnam pointing that out. And you may say, well, how would you know they were in that valley? Army 201 file. Sometimes you could go through that veteran's file and it would say, hey, they were in this valley or they were in operations in this particular valley, okay? That's evidence, that's proof, all right? Direct evidence capable by itself of providing a fact or issue. Now, I would say an example I would give is a DBQ, because on there you have a diagnosis section, right? And the only people that can diagnose individual medical, mental health professionals. Okay, so now you have a diagnosis, and then at the end of that DBQ, guess what? That doctor has to sign their name, give their medical license number, et cetera, et cetera. And that's confirming the fact of the diagnosis. That could be an example, okay? Then you have circumstantial, which means evidence that may allow the fact finder to deduce a certain fact from other facts that can be proven. Wow. I'm sorry, I cannot just think of an example of this right off the top of my head. But the most important thing is that it lists the definition of evidence and different types in the descriptions of each one. Let's keep going. Slide number 2. This is the M21-1 manual reference establishing service connection based on continuity symptoms. Now, I highlighted some stuff here in red for you, okay? I'm not going to read it verbatim. I'll just kind of give you an overview, okay? Now, symptomatology, I hope I pronounced that right, satisfies the Nexus element of direct service connection under 3.303B. And that's something that we're going to talk about, that particular 3.303 in the next slide, okay? And then it goes on to talk about service connection for a chronic disease listed under 38 CFR 3.309 subpart A. That is 1 year presumptives. And those conditions they talk about chronic, okay? So just think about this. Again, you were treated for something in service and you've been out 20 years. Have you received any treatment during that time? And I know a lot of veterans are going to say, and I say this, hey, when I was in service, I didn't go to sick call for everything. So when you get out, it's still the same way. You don't go to service sick call or go see the doctor for everything, every time something hurts, okay? But at some point, there is some treatment along the way, okay? Make sure you are keeping or creating a paper trail, okay? So even if you've been out 5, 10, 15 years, you can start that right now. Start building that because you can always explain, hey, out of this 5 or 10 year period, this is why I didn't go see treatment, okay? All right, and then you have a court case down below. But I'm gonna show you one of these 38 CFRs, but as I was going through these M21-1 manual references, make sure you jot down some of these 38 CFRs. Take the time, go out there and do your research, okay? Slide number 3. Now this is 3.303 principles relating to service connection, chronicity, and continuity. A lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but I've seen raters deny veterans based on chronicity and continuity. To break it down, to keep it simple. Remember those 4 things I told you I want to see? Diagnosis, evidence. Let's just stick with diagnosis for a second. You go out, you've been out of service a year or 2 or whatever, you go, you get a diagnosis. Continue to get treatment, documented treatment. Number 2 on that list was what? Evidence. This is evidence. Now you have proof of chronicity and continuity. Okay, if the diagnosis is chronic, ask your examiner to note chronic arthritis in the right shoulder, chronic arthritis in the right knee. Guess what? Those are 1-year presumptives, all right? Let's keep going. Slide number 4. Now, here in slide number 4, you've seen me use this particular 38 CFR in other videos. And this is a topic that I am going to harp on in 2025. Every veteran that's subscribed to my YouTube channel or family member of a veteran, you are going to memorize this, especially if you are someone that's going to go out and get your own DBQ, okay? Evidence, diagnosis, DBQ, sufficient DBQ. And if you choose not to go to a CMP exam, one of my claims, I was like, you know what? I am no longer going to a CMP exam. I started submitting DBQs. And I think it was the last one, the VA said, or VSR said, well, we're going to request a CMP exam. You're wasting your time. I'm not going. Per this regulation. That's why I'm not going. And me being a VA rater, being trained by the VA, I knew that my DBQ was sufficient for them to rate. 2 weeks later, I received a rating decision in the mail granting the benefit, okay? Now, I'm not saying for you not to go, you have to make that decision, but this is, if you decide to and they reject the DBQ, even if it's sufficient, you can argue this fact, this 38 CFR on a high-level review. All right, so again, what were those 4 things? Diagnosis, evidence, continued treatment, more so now than years past. And if you're able to get a sufficient DBQ. Those are things that I look for per the VA regulations to help me grant service connection if everything was in line, okay? With that being said, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and as always, share this video with your fellow veterans. Thank you.